You might think your life is shaped by your dreams, your goals, or even your talents, but the truth is far uglier. Your life is being quietly hijacked by habits you don't even notice, habits that drain your energy, poison your relationships, and sabotage your potential right under your nose. Most people die without ever realizing that the prison they lived in was built by their own social behavior. You've been told these habits are normal. They're not. They're silent killers of your confidence, your peace, and your influence. And if you don't identify and rip them out now, they'll follow you for decades, burying the best version of you before it's even born. By the time you reach the end of this, you'll know exactly what's been holding you back, and you'll never see people or yourself the same way again. Over-explaining yourself may seem harmless, even polite, but it is one of the most insidious ways you erode your own authority and self-respect. Every time you feel the need to justify your choices, you are subconsciously seeking permission from others to exist the way you want to exist. It's a silent confession that you don't fully believe in your own decisions unless they're validated externally. Psychology teaches us that people mirror the confidence you project. If you present your choices wrapped in layers of unnecessary reasoning, you are signaling that those choices might be weak, flawed, or open for debate. Others will instinctively treat them as such. At its core, over-explaining is a fear response. You fear being misunderstood, judged, or rejected, so you overcompensate with excessive details. The irony is that this habit almost guarantees you will be misunderstood, because you bury your main point under a pile of defensive words. This is not communication, this is self-doubt disguised as thoroughness. The most magnetic and respected individuals operate from a place of calm certainty. They share what's necessary, nothing more, and trust their actions to speak louder than any explanation could. When you over-explain, you hand over the steering wheel of your life to others. You give them the power to decide whether your reasoning is good enough. And in doing so, you allow their opinions to override your own conviction. This constant self-auditing drains mental energy and trains your brain to look outward for approval instead of inward for direction. Over time, you start anticipating criticism before it even comes, and you speak not from truth, but from a script designed to preempt judgment. That is how authenticity dies. Breaking free from this requires a radical shift in self-trust. You must accept that not everyone will agree with you, and that is not only acceptable, it is inevitable. You need to become comfortable with the discomfort of being misunderstood. Confidence is not about making everyone understand you. It is about moving forward even when they don't. Speak your truth in its simplest form, then stop. The silence that follows is not awkward, it is powerful. It communicates that you are certain, that you do not require negotiation for your own life, and that your value is not up for discussion. The less you explain, the more people lean in to listen. Constantly seeking validation is one of the most subtle yet destructive traps a person can fall into. On the surface, it feels natural. After all, humans are wired for connection and approval. But when your sense of worth rises and falls based on the opinions of others, you've placed your identity on a foundation that can crumble at any moment. This isn't just about wanting to be liked. It's about handing over the keys to your self-esteem to people who may not even have your best interests at heart. You become like a weather vane, spinning in whatever direction the social winds blow, never anchored in your own truth. The need for validation is rooted in an ancient survival instinct. Belonging to the group meant safety, rejection meant danger. But in today's world, this instinct can morph into a psychological chain. You find yourself altering your voice, your choices, even your dreams, just to fit the mold others have set for you. Over time, the real you becomes harder to recognize, buried under layers of performance. The scariest part is that this is rarely a conscious decision. It creeps in so quietly that you start believing you're making these choices for yourself when, in reality, they're driven by the hunger for someone else's nod of approval. Living this way is exhausting because you're constantly scanning the horizon for signs that you're enough. A compliment becomes a temporary high, but the crash always follows, and you're left chasing the next fix. The people who live for validation often don't realize they're in an emotional cycle identical to addiction. And just like any addiction, it robs you of freedom. You can't speak your mind without wondering if it will offend. You can't take risks without worrying how failure will look. You can't even enjoy success fully because you're too busy wondering if it's being noticed. Breaking this habit requires an unshakable internal shift. You must decide that your worth is self-generated. The truth is, no one's approval can make you more valuable, and no one's criticism can make you less. Your value is constant, independent of the applause or disapproval you receive. The most powerful people aren't those who are loved by everyone, they are those who move forward with conviction, even in the face of criticism. When you release the need for constant validation, something incredible happens. You gain control of your own emotional climate. You no longer feel the pull to explain every decision or soften every truth to be more palatable. You speak with authenticity because you're no longer filtering your words through the lens of how they will be received. The irony is that when you stop chasing validation, you often earn more genuine respect. People are drawn to those who are rooted in themselves because that kind of confidence is rare. And once you've tasted the freedom of living by your own approval, you'll never trade it for the hollow comfort of someone else's fleeting praise. Gossiping about others is one of the most deceptive forms of self-sabotage because it disguises itself as harmless connection. It often feels like bonding, a quick exchange of whispers that makes you feel included and important. But beneath the surface, gossip erodes trust, damages character, and lowers your personal value in ways that are almost impossible to repair. The truth is simple. When you build relationships on the foundation of talking about others, you are building on sand. Sooner or later, the same people you gossip with will gossip about you, and the cycle will consume you from both sides. At its core, gossip is a way to feel powerful without doing the real work to become powerful. It's easier to point out someone else's flaws than to confront your own. It's a form of cheap significance. By diminishing others, you create the illusion that you are elevated. But in reality, you are lowering yourself to the level of the very behavior you claim to judge. Your energy shifts from building your life to dissecting someone else's, and while you're busy discussing their path, you've stopped walking your own. The psychology behind gossip is rooted in insecurity and fear of exclusion. People gossip to strengthen social bonds, to create a shared enemy, or to fill the void of genuine self-worth. But what many fail to realize is that this behavior broadcasts an unspoken truth. You cannot be trusted. Even those who laugh with you while gossiping will silently note that you are capable of turning the same blade on them. In that moment, you lose the most valuable social currency a person can have: respect. Living free from gossip is not about pretending others are flawless. It's about refusing to feed a cycle that destroys character. When you remove yourself from the habit, you immediately stand out because you become a person who chooses depth over drama. Instead of spending energy analyzing someone's failures, you redirect that energy into your own growth. This shift does more than protect your reputation. It strengthens your discipline, sharpens your focus, and builds a sense of integrity that people can feel even when you're not in the room. Choosing not to gossip will test you. There will be moments where joining the conversation feels like the easiest way to fit in. But every time you resist, you're making a powerful statement. You will not build connection at the expense of someone else's dignity. You are not afraid of silence. You do not need the cheap thrill of shared negativity to feel valuable. That kind of strength commands a deeper kind of respect, one that doesn't fade when the conversation ends. When you stop gossiping, you start creating a different kind of influence, the kind that's built on trust, admiration, and authenticity. And in a world where so many waste their breath tearing others down, you become the rare person who uses words to build something worth remembering. Apologizing for your boundaries is one of the most subtle ways you weaken your own authority without realizing it. Every time you say, "I'm sorry," for protecting your time, your space, or your mental well-being, you send a message to yourself and to others that your needs are inconvenient. You turn a rightful act of self-respect into something that feels like a transgression. The problem is not just in the words, it's in the energy behind them. When you soften your boundaries with unnecessary apologies, you condition people to expect that your lines are negotiable, that they can be pushed, bent, or erased if the right amount of guilt is applied. Boundaries are not a sign of selfishness. They are a sign of clarity. They define the space where you can thrive, function at your best, and give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. Yet many people are taught from an early age that saying no is unkind, that refusing someone is a form of rejection, and that good people sacrifice without limits. This conditioning creates adults who feel obligated to cushion their boundaries with remorse, as if taking care of themselves is an offense that must be excused. In reality, the opposite is true. Without boundaries, your capacity to contribute meaningfully to others erodes over time, leaving you resentful and drained. The psychology behind this habit is rooted in approval seeking and fear of conflict. Apologizing for your boundaries is a preemptive move to avoid rejection or discomfort. You hope the apology will soften the impact of your decision and keep relationships safe. But here's the truth. People who respect you don't need you to apologize for having limits, and people who demand you do are often the very ones who benefit from you not having any. Every time you offer an unnecessary sorry, you reinforce the idea that your boundaries are a burden, and in doing so, you weaken your ability to enforce them in the future. Breaking free from this pattern requires reframing how you see your needs. Boundaries are not barriers to connection. They are the very thing that makes healthy connection possible. They communicate that you value yourself enough to manage your energy and that you respect others enough to be clear and honest. The shift happens when you replace apologies with confident statements. Instead of "I'm sorry, I can't make it," you say, "I won't be able to make it." Instead of "sorry for not answering sooner," you say, "Thanks for waiting." This is not about being cold, it's about being firm without guilt. When you stop apologizing for your boundaries, you stop asking for permission to protect your own well-being. You step into a version of yourself that is unapologetically aware of your worth, and that energy changes how people respond to you. Over time, you'll notice that the people who stay in your life are the ones who value and honor the space you've created, and that is the foundation of every strong, lasting relationship. Complaining without action is one of the fastest ways to drain your energy, weaken your mindset, and poison the environment around you. It feels like a release in the moment, a way to vent frustration and let off steam. But beneath the surface, it rewires your brain to focus on problems instead of solutions, to search for what's wrong instead of what's possible. You train yourself to be a critic of life rather than a creator in it. And here's the harsh truth. Life does not reward the constant observer of problems. It rewards the one who takes ownership and acts. The psychology of complaining is rooted in a desire for sympathy and validation. When you voice your struggles, you often want someone to recognize your pain, to confirm that you're justified in feeling frustrated. But without action, complaining becomes a form of emotional looping. You revisit the same problem over and over without moving forward. This mental cycle tricks you into believing you're doing something about the issue when, in reality, you're just rehearsing your dissatisfaction. Over time, this chips away at your self-respect because deep down, you know you are capable of more than just talking about change. You are capable of creating it. Complaining is also contagious. When you feed negativity into a conversation, you set the tone for everyone around you. People who might have been neutral or optimistic begin to mirror your frustration, and the group energy spirals downward. This is why certain environments feel heavy even when nothing dramatic is happening. They've been polluted by a culture of unproductive criticism. And while complaining may win you temporary camaraderie with others who share your grievances, it will never build the kind of influence or respect that leads to real impact. The most dangerous part of habitual complaining is that it conditions you to see yourself as a victim. You start to believe life is something happening to you rather than something you can shape. This mindset strips away your power because a victim waits for circumstances to improve, while a leader finds a way to improve them. Every complaint that is not paired with action reinforces helplessness, and the more helpless you feel, the less likely you are to try. Breaking this cycle means refusing to speak problems into the air unless you're prepared to take the next step toward a solution. This doesn't mean you suppress your frustration. It means you channel it into something constructive. The most effective people in the world still recognize when things are wrong, but they skip the endless retelling and move straight into action. This shift transforms your words from background noise into a rallying cry for progress. When you eliminate the habit of complaining without action, you reclaim your role as the author of your own story. You stop wasting energy on rehearsing the problem and start investing it in building the solution. And that change doesn't just alter the way others see you. It changes the way you see yourself. Saying yes when you mean no is one of the most deceptive forms of self-betrayal. On the outside, it looks like kindness, cooperation, or generosity. But on the inside, it is a quiet erosion of your boundaries, your priorities, and your self-respect. Every false yes is a silent agreement to abandon yourself in favor of someone else's comfort. You convince yourself it's harmless, that it's the right thing to do, yet every time you agree to something you don't truly want, you are teaching others that your time, your energy, and even your life are open for negotiation. Over time, this doesn't just drain you, it rewires how people see and treat you. The psychology behind this habit often stems from a deep fear of rejection or disapproval. Many people are conditioned from childhood to believe that love and acceptance are earned through compliance, that good people are agreeable people. This conditioning creates adults who feel a surge of guilt or anxiety at the thought of disappointing someone, even when saying yes will harm them. But here is the truth most avoid facing. Saying yes when you mean no is not kindness. It is manipulation in disguise. You are pretending to be on board to avoid discomfort, but in doing so, you're presenting a false version of yourself. That dishonesty not only hurts you, but also dilutes the authenticity of your relationships. Every false yes comes with hidden costs. You pay with your time, the most precious resource you'll ever have. You pay with your focus, because agreeing to what you don't want takes energy away from what truly matters. You pay with your emotional health, because resentment builds quietly in the background every time you prioritize someone else's needs above your own truth. And while you might believe this is the sacrifice required to maintain harmony, the reality is that it leads to the opposite. Fractured relationships built on unspoken frustration. The most powerful people in any setting are those whose yes actually means yes. Their agreements are trusted because they are selective, deliberate, and rooted in honesty. They understand that every no is also a yes to their well-being, to their purpose, to the commitments that matter most. This kind of clarity is magnetic because it shows self-respect, and self-respect naturally earns the respect of others. Breaking the habit of false agreement requires courage, the courage to face the momentary discomfort of disappointing someone in exchange for the long-term integrity of honoring yourself. It means replacing guilt with clarity and people-pleasing with truth-telling. The first few times you say no, you might feel tension, but each time you stand firm, you reclaim a little more of your freedom. When you stop saying yes out of fear, you stop living a life dictated by obligation and start living a life shaped by choice. You discover that real connection doesn't come from endless agreement. It comes from showing up as your full, unfiltered self, and that self is worth protecting. Competing for attention is one of the most energy-draining, soul-depleting habits you can carry because it traps you in a constant comparison game you will never truly win. The desire to be noticed, to be the loudest voice in the room, to prove you matter more than the person next to you may give you temporary highs, but it robs you of the deeper satisfaction that comes from living with purpose. Attention can feel like oxygen, but chasing it becomes a form of suffocation. You begin to live for applause rather than alignment, for recognition rather than real achievement. The psychology of this habit is rooted in insecurity and scarcity thinking. When you compete for attention, you are operating from the belief that there isn't enough significance to go around, that if someone else shines, it somehow dims your own light. This mindset pushes you into performative behavior, where your worth feels tied to how much you can outdo, outshine, or outtalk those around you. But the truth is, attention gained by force or desperation is fragile. It disappears as soon as the next distraction arrives, leaving you in a never-ending loop of having to fight for it again. When you focus on competing for attention, you lose sight of the fact that real influence is not loud, it is lasting. The most magnetic people are not the ones constantly trying to be seen. They are the ones so deeply rooted in their purpose that people can't help but notice them. They don't chase the spotlight. The spotlight naturally finds them because their energy is steady, consistent, and real. Competing for attention, on the other hand, forces you to bend yourself into shapes that please the crowd but often betray your true identity. You become an actor in your own life, playing a role instead of living your truth. The danger here is subtle but powerful. When you measure your worth by how much attention you get, you give the world permission to define you. Your self-esteem becomes dependent on an audience that can vanish overnight. And because attention is addictive, you will always need more of it to feel the same rush, which means you will keep sacrificing authenticity for visibility. The way out of this trap is to shift your focus from being impressive to being impactful. Stop asking, how can I make them notice me? And start asking, how can I make my presence meaningful? When your energy goes into creating value, building mastery, and staying true to yourself, the right kind of attention follows naturally, the kind that is earned, respected, and sustained. When you let go of the need to compete for attention, you free yourself from the exhausting performance of trying to be more than everyone else. You realize that your worth is not a contest, and your light does not need to overpower others to shine. Instead of running after eyes, you become someone worth looking at without even trying. That is where true power lives. Reacting to every provocation is a silent thief of your energy, focus, and emotional stability. The world is full of noise, opinions, judgments, and provocations, many of them designed to get a reaction out of you. The moment you take the bait, you surrender control of your emotional state to someone else. You allow their words, moods, or actions to dictate how you feel, how you think, and how you respond. In that instant, they are in the driver's seat of your life, and you are merely a passenger being steered by their impulses. True strength is not in firing back at every slight, it is in mastering the art of selective silence. The psychology behind constant reactivity often stems from ego and insecurity. When someone challenges you or tries to offend you, your instinctive drive is to defend your worth, to prove them wrong, or to make them regret crossing you. This is a primal survival response, rooted in the need to maintain social standing and protect identity. But in modern life, this reflex often works against you. Not every comment deserves your energy, and not every challenge is worth fighting. By reacting to everything, you not only waste mental strength, you also send the signal that your emotions are easily manipulated. Every reaction you give is a form of investment. It costs you attention, time, and energy, resources you could be using to build, grow, and create. The more you react, the more you train yourself to live in a state of constant alertness, scanning for the next thing that might offend or upset you. This hypervigilance becomes exhausting, leaving little room for peace or focus. The irony is that those who provoke often feed off your reaction. It validates their power over you. When you withhold it, you strip them of that satisfaction and maintain your composure. Choosing not to react does not mean you are weak or passive. It means you have the discipline to decide what is worth your energy and what is beneath it. It is the difference between being a thermostat and a thermometer. A thermometer simply reflects the temperature of the room. A thermostat sets it. When you are reactive, you mirror the chaos around you. When you are intentional, you decide the emotional climate you live in. Learning to master your reactions requires reframing silence as a form of strength rather than submission. It is about understanding that some battles are not worth fighting, not because you can't win, but because winning them gains you nothing. The more you train yourself to pause, breathe, and assess before responding, the more control you gain over your life. When you stop reacting to every provocation, you stop being pulled in every direction by other people's agendas. You protect your peace, preserve your focus, and project an unshakable presence. And in a world that constantly demands a reaction, the rare individual who can remain centered becomes the one who truly holds the power. Surrounding yourself with energy leeches is one of the most damaging choices you can make because it quietly drains your potential without you even realizing it. These are the people who leave you feeling depleted every time you interact with them. They thrive on drama, negativity, and constant crisis. They demand your time, your emotional labor, and your attention, but give little to nothing back in return. The danger lies in the subtlety. They rarely take everything at once. Instead, they chip away at your spirit piece by piece until you no longer have the energy to pursue your own goals or protect your own peace. The psychology behind tolerating energy leeches often comes from a misplaced sense of loyalty or guilt. You tell yourself they've been in your life for a long time, that you can't abandon them, or that it's your responsibility to help them. Sometimes it's fear of confrontation or rejection. You worry about how they will react if you create distance. But here's the truth. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Every moment you spend trying to rescue someone who refuses to help themselves is a moment stolen from your own growth. Energy leeches operate on a cycle. They create or attract problems, pull you into the emotional chaos, and leave you carrying the weight of their issues. The more you allow it, the more they normalize it. They learn that you are a constant source of comfort, distraction, or even entertainment, and they will return again and again to feed off that energy. The cost to you is not just emotional. It's mental clarity, physical vitality, and the time you could be investing into people and pursuits that truly matter. Choosing to remove or distance yourself from these people is not cruelty, it is self-preservation. Healthy relationships are reciprocal. They may not be perfectly balanced at all times, but there is an exchange of support, encouragement, and positivity. With an energy leech, the flow is one-sided. They take and take until you have nothing left to give, and even then, they may criticize you for not doing more. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward reclaiming your life. It takes courage to step away from those who drain you, especially if they are friends, family, or longtime companions. But you must ask yourself a simple question. Who would you be if you were no longer weighed down by their constant pull? Imagine the clarity, the motivation, and the peace you could feel if you surrounded yourself with people who inspire you rather than exhaust you. When you remove energy leeches from your circle, you make space for those who elevate you. You create an environment where your energy fuels growth, creativity, and purpose. And as your energy rises, so does the quality of your life. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it's essential. Because when you're at your best, you can give your best to the people and causes that truly deserve it. Holding on to grudges is one of the most corrosive habits you can carry because it traps you in a cycle where your past controls your present. A grudge is not simply a memory of being wronged. It is a decision, conscious or unconscious, to keep reliving that wrong over and over again. Every time you replay the moment in your mind, you are not punishing the other person, you are punishing yourself. You are handing over your peace to the very person or situation that hurt you. And while you may think you are holding the grudge to protect yourself from being hurt again, what you are really doing is keeping yourself chained to an emotional anchor that stops you from moving forward. The psychology behind grudges often comes from the human need for justice. When we feel betrayed, mistreated, or disrespected, the mind seeks a sense of balance. We want the other person to acknowledge the pain they caused, to feel what we felt, to pay for what they did. But here is the painful truth. Many of the people who hurt you will never give you the closure you're waiting for. Some won't admit fault, some won't even remember the details, and others may never care. By holding on to the grudge, you tie your emotional well-being to a resolution that may never come. That is a form of self-imposed imprisonment. Grudges are also a form of identity. You begin to see yourself through the lens of that hurt, telling the story again and again until it becomes part of who you are. But when your identity is built around a wound, you will subconsciously protect the wound instead of healing it. You may even avoid peace, because peace would mean letting go of the pain that has defined you for so long. This is why some people secretly resist forgiveness. It feels like losing part of themselves. Letting go of a grudge is not about excusing the behavior or pretending the harm never happened. It's about refusing to give that harm any more space in your mind or control over your emotions. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as a gift to the other person, when in reality it is a gift to yourself. It is the act of reclaiming your power by saying, "You no longer get to live rent-free in my head." When you release a grudge, you create space for new experiences, healthier relationships, and a lighter spirit. You stop carrying the weight of anger, resentment, and bitterness, and you start walking with the freedom to focus on what truly matters. This doesn't mean you forget. It means you remember without letting it poison your present. Your life is too valuable to be anchored to past injuries. The energy you spend nursing a grudge is energy stolen from your own growth. The moment you decide to let go is the moment you step out of the prison you've been holding yourself in. And that is when you truly become untouchable,